Hey everybody, welcome back to the Men of the Kingdom podcast. It's your host Kyle, it's my co-host Aaron. If you're new to the channel, we just want to say the purpose of this is very simple. We want to help men live successful lives according to God's design. If you're one of our faithful viewers, of course, welcome back. And if you are new to the channel, I want to encourage you to just like and subscribe when we release new videos. You'll get a notification if you turn the notification bell on. So if you stay up to date with our most current videos, it'd be meaningful to both of us and hopefully a blessing to you as you take in some of the stuff we're going to talk about, which brings us to today's topic, which is a very good topic for a lot of people our age and even older through it, because we're going to be talking about dating mistakes that both Aaron and I have made that hopefully you will avoid, save you some heartache and from the heartache of other people. But before we do that, Aaron, how are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing well. We're the best guys to talk about this. We've made all these mistakes. The hardest thing about this for me was narrowing down the mistakes.
As your top 50 mistakes.
I was like, this could literally be a series of all the mistakes that we've made. So I was just thinking too, and we prayed before this, how cool it is that even us feeling like, honestly, this is an area that I feel like, especially when I was younger, was pretty brutal, right? I was messing up. I was hurting other people, hurting myself, sinning, just falling on my face over and over. Right. It's so cool that God still uses guys like us. And even in the Bible, right? You look at King David, Solomon, a lot of really important biblical men who were literally kings and like the wisest man, Solomon, to ever walk the earth. And they still fell into the temptation and sin and messed up in relationships. So not really comparing us to Solomon or David, but more that it's just cool that even though you and I are very far from perfect in this domain, that hopefully we're able to help some other guys avoid those mistakes. But yeah, what are you most excited about for this week?
For this week or for this episode?
For this episode.
Oh, for this episode, one, learning from you. I mean, we've talked a lot about this in this area, but I think it's interesting to look back on some of the things you have done and just learning from it. I've been single now for a little while. You're obviously engaged, getting married soon, so kind of different areas of the spectrum, but we both made mistakes, and I think it's just, I'm excited to kind of pass those on to younger guys. This morning I was going for a run. I was just thinking about that when we kind of started this whole channel, is to try to create the channel that we wish we had growing up. So hopefully there's young guys, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever your age is, watching this and say, hey, I'm going to take to heart what these guys are saying, and you'll be thankful for it. Just like the advice we've gotten from parents where they say something, you're growing up, you're like, okay, like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then you experience and you're like, shoot, my parents, they knew what they're talking about. So I kind of feel like an old parent, if you will, talking to hopefully a younger generation.
Yeah, we're officially the old guys.
We are the older guys.
Woke up early on a Saturday, had our decaf coffee. Now we're about to sit the kids down for a little fireside chat.
A little education here. So we just want to jump right into it. You want me to kick it off? I can take number one.
Also, I was going to preface this too by, if you think my voice sounds really weird, I was screaming really loud for the first half of the Timberwolves game. Went to the game this week. My voice, I lost it the second half. I think that's why the Timberwolves lost.
Maybe.
So if you're listening to this and you're like, that guy sounds really raspy, even me losing my voice wasn't enough to cheer the Timberwolves to victory. So just bear with me. But yeah, you go first. I'll collect my voice here.
Gotcha. So the first one, mistake number one I made, and I think this is, a lot of these tips you'll find probably pertain to a lot of areas other than dating. This is centered around relationships and that. So the first one is dating for the wrong reasons, especially as you're young, but even into your whole life, you can do this, where a lot of dating is revolving around, sexual things, physical desires. Is she pretty? And those are kind of the surface level things you look at instead of what is the purpose of dating and what's the end goal. I was kind of reading a definition of like purpose before this. Like there's an end goal in mind. And a lot of times we jump into relationships because it's like, well, I'm bored or I'm lonely or this girl's really pretty, and that's why you go into it. And dating someone because they're attractive isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if it's the only thing, you're setting yourself up for failure. So just dating for the wrong reasons, especially at a younger age. Like I said, I've been single now for a few years, kind of getting older, but in high school, even early on in college, it was just something you did without an end goal in mind. It's just like if you get in your car, you wouldn't necessarily just start driving. Different from like a joyride if you were just going, but they say, okay, like where are you trying to get to? I don't know. It's like you have no end in mind. So I would just encourage you, understand whether it's dating, a job, whatever you're doing, like what's the purpose and motivation behind it, and what's the end goal for it. Just jumping into a relationship, especially when you have another person's heart and soul involved, is a big responsibility, especially as men, how we're supposed to lead. So if you're jumping in there for the wrong reasons, you're setting yourself up for a lot of hurt. So that's number one, dating for the wrong reasons.
Okay, so what would you say are some of the right reasons to date? Like, what have you learned? And now that you're single, if you were to jump into a relationship, what would be like some of the motives that you would now have?
Well, I think learning from a lot of the other mistakes we'll talk about, but when you think about the Bible and as you kind of read through it, how God has designed relationships, especially the marriage and how important that is, to be a reflection of his relationship with us.
Sure.
So I think as I think about the future, hopefully meet a nice lady, move towards marriage just like you are, understanding how we're supposed to reflect God's love for us and how you're supposed to go about that. And I think you could probably touch on it more because Aaron, obviously, you guys know, is engaged, getting married here next month. So I think to answer your question, getting into a relationship with somebody, it would really be revolving around, okay, what's the call? How does God call me to lead as a man in a relationship? And how am I pushing this girl and vice versa closer to God, becoming more holy people that he wants us to be? I just think, not that we haven't tried in past relationship, but it just got lost. And that goes into some of the other mistakes I'll talk about here soon. But
Cool.
just the overarching thing, what does God call relationships to be like, and how does he love us? And then kind of pouring that out into somebody else.
I do that. I heard Craig Groeschel one time. He's a big pastor. If you haven't seen him, I would check him out with Life Church. He said he did premarital counseling, and he'd hear couples, he'd say, tell me why you love each other. Why are you guys getting married? And they'd tell him, and he would just kind of sit there stoically, and he'd say, I'm not sure if you should be getting married. Like, you got to tell me, why would you get married? And they would always kind of say, well, we're in love, this and that. And he said the only reason you should get married is that you can help each other love Jesus better together than you could apart. So I love your answer. I think that's spot on. Just was what that reminded me of. So, okay, that's mistake number one. Not having the right intentions, not understanding the purpose. So my first mistake number two, and this is one that really resonated with me, even with my current fiance, who's going to be my wife here in 2 months. Yeah. This was something that we didn't understand at the beginning, which is not knowing the proper steps in dating. So you're talking about marriage, right? Literally spending the rest of your life with someone. There's a huge gap between going from stranger to spouse, life partner, covenant with God. So when you think about that, I don't think until I got into a relationship and started studying a lot of this stuff that I understood what all those different steps are. So I just wanted to share those quickly. Please. I would say the first one is attraction. And that's where you're interested in someone. For the young kids watching it, this is the we're talking phase. We're just talking. She might have DM'd me, might be talking here and there. Hey, no labels. We're just trying to keep it chill. The attraction phase. Now, I think that's a lot different than actually the next phase, which is dating. And that's what I define as becoming an official couple. Okay. So you could be just talking with a bunch of people, right? Say, she's nice, she's nice, but I'm not dating any of them. Like, they're not my girlfriend. Dating is actually becoming an official couple. And this goes to some of the things we'll talk about later, but having the conversation about, like, what are we? What's going on here? This is how I feel about you. Do you feel the same way about me? What will our relationship look like, right? Like, okay, if we're going to date, like, what things are we going to do for fun? What does that mean? Like, what does dating mean to you? What's your relationship history? What's mine? And again, this isn't stuff that you need to be getting out on, like, the second or third date. I'm saying, like, there's a big difference between we're just hanging out and getting to know each other to now we're officially a couple. The third one, and this is probably the one that I messed up the most, I thought that you just went from dating to then sometime, years, decades, whatever it may be, you move to engagement. There's actually a phase in between that, and this is what I think is the game changer. If you're watching this, this would be the one I would encourage you. Research this, understand this, and that phase is courtship. And that's when you're getting intentional about dating someone with the intention of someday moving towards engagement and marriage. Does that mean that when you move from dating to courtship that you're going to automatically marry the person you're with? Absolutely not. But I think it's you and that person realizing, okay, we're more serious than just casually boyfriend and girlfriend. I love you, I love your family, I love your values, your goals, all that. Let's get serious about dating in a way that if it continues to work, we can move towards engagement. And to me, that was something I never had heard of before, even before I met my fiance now. So some of the things I put down is just having deeper conversations around what your life may look like together. Before Sammy and I got engaged, we would go out to dinner. Initially, it would be just we'd talk about the Gophers or what instruments she played or my friends or our church group, whatever, all good things. But as we moved into that courtship phase and started studying that together, we started talking about, well, where do you want to live? And, what do you really value? Like, what are your views on this? How many kids do you want to have? Like, what role do you want to have in your family's life? Some of those things that if you're just casually dating someone, probably doesn't matter. But if you want to become engaged, which is the next phase,
Right.
you need to know that, right? Because you don't want to skip over that. And then you're in that season of engagement and then you start having all those conversations. That's bad.
Yeah.
You know, at that point, you've already made a commitment. You've gotten her emotions involved, your emotions involved, a lot of money, you know, engagement rings, that whole process is not cheap.
Right.
So that's the next phase is engagement, which is actually proposing to become married. In this phase, this is a phase we're in now, where you're planning your life together. Where do you guys want to live? And the exciting part about this is that your families start to get intertwined. One of my friends said that his family has a phrase that with their family gatherings, that's no ring, no bring. I think that's a little extreme.
I like that.
I wouldn't recommend that, but there definitely is something that like once you move to that phase of engagement, you're not just going to the family gathering as an outsider. You're going to be a part of that family, and she's going to be a part of your family. Right. So that's the last phase before marriage. And marriage, I just defined as the covenant between you and God, two becoming one. That one's pretty simple. We all know what that one is. But I would just really challenge you to think about that. Attraction, dating, courtship, engagement, and marriage. And lead your relationships with that pattern. Trust me, from a guy who did not do that for a lot of times, and now through the grace of God, I've learned how to do that in my current relationship. I would highly recommend understand those phases. Always be the guy that's leading your relationship where you want it to go.
That's good. Quick question on that.
Yeah.
And I think most people know from like the talking to dating that talk is, so to speak, like what are we?
Right.
From dating to courtship, like you mentioned, for you guys or in general, is there a conversation has, or is it a natural progression you both understand based on type of conversation you had, or are there distinct like, hey, we're moving into this next phase? How do you guys handle that?
Well, that's a good question. And I would also say, too, that I think that's a mistake that's not on my list, but a lot of guys get really worried about what phase they're in. You should be leading the relationship, but that doesn't always mean that you have to be the first one to bring it up. Like, naturally, I think that as you fall in love with someone, like, women are wired for connection, relationships, family. Right. So if they're at a phase where with Sammy and I, the way it worked, we were in that dating phase, and I could tell, like, she started saying things about, like, hey, I could just see us like really working out, or, you know, I love the weekend I spent visiting back home with you, or it's been fun getting to know your dad, your friends, whatever. And I think that there's like little triggers like that where you realize, okay, we're not just talking about surface level stuff anymore. Yeah. You know, we're starting to, and you can just tell like she's starting to share more of her life with me. Something I noticed is that Sammy started calling me a lot, like when she had problems, where early in the dating phase, she's probably calling like her dad with those. Subtly, it's like, wow, I'm giving counsel to like what she should do about like her job, or she has an issue with her friend group. And that I felt a lot of pressure with that too, of like, I love this woman. I don't want to be giving her bad advice or bad counsel. And I really like, you shouldn't be getting that deep into someone that you're just dating, right? Like if you're just casually dating, you don't want to be making like big life-changing decisions with someone. So I think it is somewhat natural. I think that it happens best if you let, you know, your girlfriend casually start bringing that stuff up. And then once you feel like, okay, you know, I feel like she's ready to move into that courtship phase, then you can have the conversation and say, and it, with that one too, it's less of like I think the most important conversation is from the attraction to dating. With that one, you probably don't have to sit down and say, all right, let's move into courtship. But you should, as the man, you should start thinking, okay, maybe when we go out to dinner, I'm going to have a few really good questions planned. Or we're going to go out on this date, and I'm going to be thinking through some of the things that are important to me. And you know what I mean? Yeah. Just kind of naturally doing it. But she should feel your relationship change if you're doing it right. Does that make any sense?
No, it certainly does. And that's exactly what I was wondering about, because I think people might get confused. Like, oh, shoot, is this a formal conversation we have to have? Yeah. But I think to your point, if you're leading well, like what's understood doesn't need to be spoken about. Totally. Type of thing. Yeah, so that's good. I like that. And we're going to move into number 2. Tip number 3 is, and again, this is so relevant to every area of your life, but weak boundaries. And I came at this more from the standpoint of sexual purity and, you know, physical interactions. It's good to be attracted to someone. You should be attracted to someone, but if you don't put in proper boundaries, I made the mistake in my life where it's like, okay, I'm a fairly strong guy. I'm pretty disciplined in other areas of my life. I can handle just having this girl over to watch a movie by ourselves, or I can handle XYZ or this, even though I've been advised and given advice from a lot of smart people like, hey, you shouldn't do this or go date in public, whatever the case might be. Yeah. And we think that on our own strength, because when I'm sitting here with you, it's easy to say, oh, I wouldn't do that. Right. But when you're in the moment with that person you're attracted to, and so those, you know, your human desires and how we're made starts taking over, it's a lot harder to say no in there. So I
Yeah.
think setting really good boundaries, you're going to protect yourself from a lot of heartache. You're going to protect her from a lot of heartbreak,
Yeah.
and it's going to be good for both of you. So I just think looking back, having weak boundaries and putting ourselves in positions to fail really hurt us. And there was one story I always heard. I was talking to one of my buddies, Jordan Schrader, if you're watching this, this one's for you. I was talking to him. We were in college, and I was just going through a harder time in my life, struggling with certain sins and stuff. And he told me a story. He said, Kyle, there was once a king who lived up on this huge mountain, and he had a couple kids, and they needed to get to school on the bottom of the hill. And so he put out a job application for drivers that could pick up his kids and take them to school. So they came in, and he interviewed 3 of them. One guy said, look, I can get to about 3 feet from the cliff. I'm a really good driver without going over the edge. He said, oh, that's pretty good. Another guy said, look, I can get like within 3 inches of the cliff and still not go over. I'm pretty good. He's like, wow. And the other guy said, I care about your kids. I will stay as far away from the edge as I can. And I think in relationships especially, we try to see how far we can get to the line without sinning or going over, where in reality you should stay as far back as you can because you love that person, you want to protect yourself and maintain integrity for both of you. So just think of that story when you're going through it. Hey, is me going to this girl's house alone the smartest idea, or is this? Maybe not. Maybe you should take it more public or have someone else come with you. Whatever it is, I'm telling you, it only takes one big mistake, not to ruin your life by any means, but it can cause a lot of unnecessary hurt. And I think that's one thing I've learned in my life. So weak boundaries, set good boundaries.
Dang, dude, that's convicting. And the crazy thing about that too is that it doesn't get any easier. Like as you move through those phases, if anything, it gets harder,
For sure.
right? Because you fall deeper in love with that person. You're more attracted to them. You start loving them, their family, everything about them. So that's an amazing tip. I love that one.
Can I ask you a question on that? And
Yeah.
we've talked about it, but I've heard this from other guys too. Is there a temptation as an engaged guy? You guys, they're getting married next month. It's like, right, you're at the finish line. You can see it at the end.
Totally.
To throw, quote unquote, throw in the towel. It's like, look, we're going to be married anyway. We're going to start our lives. It's fine to do it now. How have you balanced that, or have you experienced it at all?
Yeah, totally. Or just little things like, having the desire to start your life together before it's actually a thing. Totally. Yeah. And it's super easy to say, well, yeah, it's going to be in June. Right. And I will say that's something that I'm proud with Sammy and I, is that we've really prioritized like trying not to do that. And she's the one that really leads a lot of that. Like, she's very intentional with trying to protect her heart of not getting ahead of herself. So, it's kind of contradicting to my next point, which is funny that I say that, but I mean, it'll make more sense after my next point.
Okay.
I'll share this and I'll kind of naturally tie into your question.
Yeah, do you think?
So point number 4 is not leading the relationship. And where I see guys making this mistake is they don't know what leading in their own life looks like. So then it's like, how can you lead life with another person in that equation? So how I'm saying the example of like in that specific instance, Sammy is leading us. Leading the relationship doesn't mean that you're not listening to your partner, that you're not taking their opinion. Sammy is very smart. And if you're watching this video, you want to be with someone who you respect, who you can learn from. So why would you not take that person's opinion into consideration, not have conversations? I think leading ultimately is just that if one of you guys has to make a decision, you want it to be you. It doesn't mean you're not listening, you're not taking into consideration. I think that with gender roles too, there's a lot of women that feel like, well, the Bible just downplays. It says that, wives must submit to their husbands. That's true, but on the flip side, it also says men are called to love their wives like Christ loved the church. He laid down his life for it. Right. So they're big callings on both sides. Submitting to your husbands, laying down your life, like neither of those is a small, easy thing.
Sure.
So with this point, this is a mistake that I've made, which is just getting passive, not leading the relationship. And some ways that you can do this is not only in your relationship, but just pursuing what you want. So even if you're not dating someone, but you have a girl that you like, put yourself out there, have a conversation with her, say, hey, I've enjoyed getting to know you. Do you want to grab some dinner sometime? It doesn't have to be this big, like, oh my gosh, we're like, I'm going to ask you to marry me on the first date, but just, hey, it's been fun hanging out with you. Would you want to go check out a driving range sometime or go play mini putt? We talk about that all the time of how a lot of guys think that asking a girl out for the first time is this big high pressure, like you have to confess your love to them. Right. I really don't think you do. Like in that attraction phase,
probably shouldn't.
You probably should not.
That's another mistake we can put on the card here.
So in that attractions phase, I think it's more just about hanging out, getting to know each other, and just having fun. And then if it moves into more, then you can move into that dating conversation and actually become official. But Other things that I've learned is bringing up conversations about where you're going first. You don't want to put that on your spouse. Now, with the example of Sammy and I, it's kind of a two-way conversation. Like, we're always asking, you know, is this leading our relationship where we want it to go? Like, what are you noticing? What am I noticing? But I think as the man, you want to be having those conversations about, hey, this is where I see our relationship going, and this is how we're going to get there. And then I already talked about this, but setting up fun dates and making plans, that's something I struggled with when I was young. I would be texting my girlfriend like, hey, sweetie, what do you want to do tonight? You know, like, where should we eat? And she's just like, I don't care. Like, would you please just make a decision for the life of me?
That is funny.
And I've learned that now. So I always try to have date plans where it's like, all right, Sammy, meet me at this time. Like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go here. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. And she loves that because it takes the pressure off her. She can just show up and have fun. And that's something I just absolutely butchered when I was younger. And then a big thing too is that this isn't just practical in terms of setting dates or having conversations, but you need to be leading your relationship spiritually. And that starts with leading yourself well spiritually. Have a good prayer life.
Yeah.
Lead in service. Be engaging your partner to say, hey, you know, let's go serve. Let's go volunteer. This is a strength I see that you have. How can you use that spiritually? How can I use my strengths? Like, having all those conversations. Because if there's one thing I've learned from our marriage counseling, it's that God has to be at the center of our relationship. And that means individually, but as the guy, you know, you're going to be tired at the end of the night and say, oh, maybe I don't need to, you know, call her and pray. Yeah. I struggle with that all the time. Had a long day. Should I call Sammy and we can pray quick before bed? It's a lot easier to just say, hey, hope you had a great day. We'll talk to you in the morning, rather than, hey, what's on your mind? Like, can I pray for you before bed? And I think that consistent rhythm really matters. So that's mistake number 4, is not leading the relationship and not knowing how to lead your life or your relationship.
And can you, well, 2 things. One, I was just thinking about my mom and dad. That was one thing they implemented. And I don't know what phase of their relationship in terms of how many years ago, but they would call each other every night.
Yeah, so cool.
Usually they'd FaceTime and pray. And I know that was one of the most life-giving things for the relationship. Both for my father and mother have both spoken about it. Where it's like you come together at the end of the day. And my dad was a truck driver, so he's on the road a lot. They didn't see each other every day. But it was just cool to share life together and pray and just have that intimacy from the spiritual component. But do you have any bonus tips for guys when it comes to planning dates? Like, I have a few ideas, but I want to hear you because you've been going on dates. Like, what advice? Are there any websites, places? Like, if you need a date idea, what are some things guys can, like, think of? Like, how do you go about planning dates? Because there's a lot. So,
funny tip is I actually have heard some great date ideas from girls that I know that either are in relationships or, like, my relatives that are frustrated because their boyfriends or husbands don't bring them there.
Yeah.
Or they say, I just wish that we could do this. I've always wanted to do this. Honestly, that's a great source of date ideas. You hear a girl saying like, oh, I've really wanted to check this place out. You think like, wonder if we could do that.
Yeah, that's good.
Honestly, just trying to do research in advance. In Minnesota too, like the seasons change. So you kind of got to be knowing like, what's the weather going to be? I don't know, man, just trying to mix it up and find fun things that you both enjoy. Sometimes it's going to be something that you enjoy more than she does. Sometimes you have to do things that she enjoys more than you do. And really just the joy in that is like just spending the time with the other person and not always having it be what you would want to do and more just something that is going to be a fun memory for both you guys. So just fun stuff. Don't put too much pressure on it and just try new things. That would be my advice.
Good. I like it. Good stuff. So we're going to move into mistake number 3. So I think it's number 5 on the list here so far. And this one is not listening to friends or family. How often have you thinking through your life where, your friends are like, I don't know about this guy or I don't know about this girl, but you're so in it. It's called the rose, what is it, rose glasses or rose-colored glasses.
Get tunnel vision. You
get tunnel vision where you just, especially early on in relationships, it's so easy to negate all the mistakes and flaws that you might not see because you're so infatuated with this person. And again, it makes it even harder when you're getting involved physically when you shouldn't, because the priority becomes sexual gratification and you start overlooking that, hey, she doesn't really love people. She's not pursuing the Lord. She's not this. And of course, everyone has their flaws, mistakes, including yourself. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying heed the advice and what other people are saying. And that doesn't mean too, like maybe you found that person that is a godly guy or girl pushing you closer to Christ. And maybe you don't have a good relationship with your family and they're just trying to tear you two apart. Right. There's a distinction between people who don't have your best interest at heart and people who really love you and see that there are some red flags. I think of my own life. I think of my friends where it's like, look, you love that person. You don't want to be that guy to say, hey, man, I don't think she's the one for you. But at the same time, you can kind of see it out in the open. So just take that advice from people and at least be willing to hear them. Like, hey, maybe they come over for family stuff, or hey, what'd you think of them? And just kind of feel it out.
Yeah, that's
so
such
just
good advice.
yeah, find those trusted people in your life, whether it's friends, family, who really care about you and have your best interest at heart, and take back their feedback on those people. I think it's going to help you out a lot, and I wish that was something I had done in previous relationships. So that's tip number 5. Number 3 on my list is not listening to friends or family.
Yeah, that's a great one. Man, yeah, that's a tough one to do, but especially for younger guys. You made this point earlier, but a lot of times we think our older relatives and our parents don't know what they're talking about, but the motherly instinct, like they say, is a real thing. You know, so ignoring that, brutal.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 6th mistake here that I have is talking too much, doing too much, or just in general, pursuing women too much. And what I mean by that is, again, you could say, is this counterintuitive? This guy just said his last point is leading well, going for what you want. Yes, you should go for what you want, but you shouldn't completely sell out just to get a girl. What I mean by that is dating is a two-way street. And I think if you find the right person, someone who your family loves, someone that you love,
right,
you get into that relationship with the right intention, it's not that it's going to be easy or flawless, but it should be pretty smooth.
Right.
Meaning that you should hang out with them. Maybe afterwards they send you a text, hey, it was a great time. Thanks for planning that fun date. And then you could say, hey, I had a great time too. Would love to hang out again. Like, when can we hang out next time? Rather than, I'm sure you can relate to this, where you feel like you're with someone and you have to say everything perfect. And you always have to be on your A game, and you have to be full of confidence, and you have to say the perfect things and always be cool. And you know what I mean? Like, dress perfectly. Like, I don't know if you can relate to that, but I've definitely been in relationships where I felt like if I slipped off my A game at all, that I was going to let that person down, or they were going to leave me. And that, like, that's not how relationships should be. So don't put a relationship above. Another mistake I could have put on here is, and this kind of falls into it, of just doing too much. Live your own life. Keep your friendships. Keep your hobbies. Keep exercising. Keep listening to Men of the Kingdom. Definitely do that one.
And like and subscribe if you haven't already.
But, you know, you get in relationships, especially as young guys, and all of a sudden their friends are MIA. They haven't hung out with the boys in weeks. They stop going to the gym. They start getting a little thick. You know what I mean? And it's just downhill. And that's going to make your relationship worse, but it's going to make all areas of your life worse. Like, if a girl likes you, it's for who you are and your interests and your hobbies. And then the last thing with that too, and man, this is a terrible one that I have done a bad job. You get nervous, you're on a date, you just start yapping. Just start smacking your gums. Guys, listen more than you speak. Women love to talk. It's scientifically proven that women talk more day to day than guys do. So give her that gift of opening up to you. Kyle is amazing at this. Great listener.
I open up to you all the time here.
You get me to open up to you. But ask questions. We've talked about this before. We've talked about this and how to make friends. But ask questions. Become a good listener. Validate what people are saying to you. Ask them about things that they want to talk about. If you do that, you're going to have better dates, better relationships. Everything's going to go better. So mistake number 6, talking too much, doing too much, and pursuing women too much.
That's good. That's a good one. That's a good one. So tip number 4, it might sound, because you had not leading well along those lines, and that is what I had written down, but I'm going to take it from a different perspective. So Aaron, when he was speaking about his point, it was more about leading in relationships well. What I'm saying is more leading yourself well, but leading well when it's time to walk away. This is a mistake I've made probably the most out of my list, my 5 here, and there's other mistakes too. But a lot of times it comes under the guise of not wanting to hurt people.
Totally.
There's 2 instances. One is when I was dating somebody and we knew we weren't right for each other, and we had the relationship going way too long than it should have because I didn't want to make a decision. As a man, I wasn't leading well. She didn't want to hurt me, and ultimately she was the one who kind of brought it up. I knew for a long time, like, I am not fulfilled. I do not want to marry this woman, but it became familiar and you were afraid to be lonely, whatever your reasons are. And it just ended up hurting her, hurting me, and it went on way longer than it was. So, and then the second part is when I had gone on some dates now, maybe I go out with a girl for however we met, and I just didn't lead well by saying, hey, you were nice, I had a good time, but I think I'm not really interested type of thing. And a lot of times I just kind of, and it sounds terrible, and it is, but just like don't really hit them up after and hope they get the hint. But that's really poor leadership on my part, where I should at least be taking the initiative to say, hey, not leaving anybody wonder, like, hey, I appreciate the time, but I just don't think it's something I want to pursue. So leading well, but in the standpoint of knowing when to walk away and let that person go. So it works both ways, and I know that's a mistake that can hurt a lot of people. I've been hurt by it myself, where it's like, I thought we had a good time, and then this girl just kind of ghosted me type of thing. So
Right. Just clear communication too.
yeah, the clear communication. Just be upfront and forward with it. It might feel awkward or tough in the moment, but when you look back, you're going to say, wow, I'm really glad I did it. And I think as you implement that habit in your life and you start doing that in other areas too, whether it's relationships or just saying no to friends to go do things or opportunities, whatever it is, I'm telling you, it's a game changer. So just leading well in the sense that, hey, I'm clearly communicating that this isn't going to work, and in that context. So that's number 4 on my list.
Dang, man, that's a good one. Because, a lot of these are advice in terms of progressing the right relationship, but not every at-bat is going to be a home run. So, I love that tip. I love that you're taking a little bit of a different perspective in terms of, like, some of the things, like the landmines, right? Like, whether it's family advice or letting it drag on. Like, I literally think that almost every one of our friends has fallen into that trap. So, I love that. Okay, so the next one, which is tip number 8, for me, this is probably one of the ones that I see the most common amongst, and I think it goes back to some of the things you've said. But mistake number 8 is not knowing what you want. Man, you talk to guys and they say, well, I like this girl or I like that girl. And you're like, hey, just like describe to me your ideal partner, like your ideal person you would want to date. And they hum and ha. And then they wonder why they can't find their ideal partner. Well, how can you find something if you don't know what you're looking for?
Exactly.
And
Excuse me.
I think what it comes down to at the end of the day, and I would challenge you, if you're watching this or even just us, just start looking at couples that you see and realize that a lot of times you end up attracting what you are. Meaning that the energy you put off, the qualities you exude is what you're going to attract to you. If you want a woman, say that's on your list. You say, I want someone who's a great communicator, who loves the Lord, and who has a great family life. If you're someone who's super closed down, who has really bad anger problems, who hasn't spoke to your parents in months, and who doesn't go to church and doesn't know anything about the Word of God, what are the odds that if you meet a woman that has all those qualities, that she's going to be drawn to you, right? And I think a lot of guys are delusional where they're like, oh man, this girl's tripping, she doesn't like me. You have to become the kind of person that who you're looking for would actually be interested and attracted in. And the good thing about that too is if you're doing those things, even if you don't find that person, then you're becoming more the person you want to be.
Yes.
And that's always a win too. So
I like that.
The way I learned this is Sammy and I, when we really started to like get to know each other and have deeper conversations, we found out that we both had very in-depth lists. I literally had a list of 100 qualities I wanted to find in the woman I would marry. If Sammy doesn't meet 100 of those, 95, like legitimately 95 out of 100, from little weird things of, I had things on there about how I wanted her family to be, like what I wanted her personality to be like, what I wanted her interests to be, and got so specific. And I think that, you know, God can provide. We could do an episode on like miraculous things we've seen, of things that have came into our life when we least expect it. The more clear you get on what you want, the easier it is for you to find it. And then you're praying, Lord, you know, give me this woman. I wrote a note. I don't know if I ever told you this. I wrote a note to my future wife before I met her. After I went through a really bad breakup, I sat down and I wrote a letter to my future wife. And it literally, I was writing a letter to someone I didn't know, and Sammy fits that bill perfectly.
Has she read it, or are you going to give it to her on your wedding day, or is it just for you?
So I don't even know where it is, to be honest. I should probably try to find it. But stuff like that, man, where you have to know what you want. And I just see so many guys, and I think it goes back to the family and friends thing. If your friends are telling you that that girl's not right for you, it's probably because you haven't really sat down and done some soul searching about what do you want and who is this person.
Right.
And if you don't know what you want, you're not going to know where that person isn't lining up. Yeah. And then you'll just say, you'll blame all these other things. But again, it's your responsibility as a man to know what you're looking for. And again, like you said, if someone's not what you're looking for, you can end it in a loving way. Right. But if you don't know what you want, you get in a relationship with the wrong person, it's going to be a disaster for both of you. And then you'll blame them when in reality, it's your own fault. So guys, I don't care if you're 10 years old or 70 years old watching this, know what you want, put it on paper, and I guarantee, pray about it too. Don't think that this is just a worldly, you're going to go on a Where's Waldo of all these categories. Pray about it, become that person, and you have a way better chance of actually meeting the person of your dreams. That's
good. Well, number 5 on my list and number 9 on this top 10 kind kind of ties in a few different pieces, but it's not being on purpose and trying to find fulfillment in a person and not in your relationship with God. I made this mistake. I think the most, and probably a lot of guys go through this, but it's that weird phase between high school and college. I was dating a girl at the time. She was a senior in high school when I was a freshman in college.
Not the transition dating.
Not good.
Always the freshman year.
It's bad. And so I know nobody at school, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life. I'm lonely. You're sitting in your dorm bored, and you just start texting them all the time. You're like, because I have nothing going on in my life, and I'm going after her, and eventually,
right,
like you would suspect, we kind of went our separate ways, and it just wasn't good. But that still happens now. Not for me personally, but there's guys who are working full time. You're established in your life, but you're not really pursuing a purpose, and that doesn't mean a career. It doesn't mean money. It doesn't mean that. It's that contentment and that relationship with God where you feel insecure as a man, and you will push women away. There are some women who are also struggling with the same thing, and you might find somebody who's in that same boat willing to do it, but after a while, that relationship it will become toxic.
Yeah.
So before you even want to start dating a woman, and you've talked about this too, maybe not on here, but when you least expect to meet, like you're not trying to meet a girl. It's like,
Absolutely.
hey, Lord, you kind of know what's on my heart, who I'm looking for, but I'm going to be pursuing you, serving you, loving people. And then boom, out of nowhere,
Literally.
here they are. And I don't know if we've ever told your guys' story on here, but long story short, Aaron was in a relationship for a while, ended, it wasn't a great end. And he just got serious. He started going to church, pursuing God, doing all those things. And then literally out of the blue is how he met Sammy through a connection group. And now they're getting married in a month. And I can tell you countless stories of people where like, and usually it's after a breakup or something where like, look, I'm done with the relationships. I'm just going to pursue this and try to become a better person. And then they find that person. So that's my encouragement to you. And that's my final tip on 5 is don't look for that person if you're feeling lonely or bored to fill that gap. Figure those things in your life out first. And that ultimately comes down to pursuing God and living for him. And I promise you those other areas of your life will just take care of themselves. And it will become easy, like you talked about early on in this episode, where you don't feel like you have to be perfect. You're not hiding anything. What you see is what you get. This is the man you're going to get. And that's when you'll find the authentic woman who what they know what they're looking for. They see that. And there's no fake. There's no acting. It's not, hey, I have to perform everywhere and look really good or else she's going to leave me. It's no. This is who I am. I'm comfortable. I'm confident in myself. And I know who I am and my value in Christ. And the rest is not easy, but it takes care of itself. So that's tip number 5 is when you're not on purpose and you're trying to find fulfillment in another person, it often ends up poorly.
Man, that's good.
Number 10, take us home, my brother.
Man, I was just going to say though, like, do you think another way you could word that is I almost feel like sometimes in relationship, like your partner takes the place of God. Where you're hurting, you call them. You need something, you call them. I mean, like, does that resonate with you at all? Where that person takes the role that God should be playing in your life? Just because you're so dependent on them, more dependent on them than you are on God.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't do this perfectly or rarely, and I wish it was. I wish that in every area of my life, whatever the decision, big or small, my first instinct would be, I'm going to take some time and I just want to pray about it. Should I buy this car? Lord, I'm just going to pray about it. Should I date this girl? I just want to pray about it. Yeah. And I think it's good to seek wise counsel, and the Bible talks about that too from other people, whether it's your fiance, your wife, your best friend, your mother, your father, whatever that is. But how would our lives look differently if we said the first person I'm going to seek guidance from is the Lord himself, who knows everything? And so I think there is that temptation where we rely so much on people instead of relying on the one who created everything. Yeah. And so I think that's a challenge for me, you, and everyone watching this week. No matter what the decision, hey, should I eat here or here? Just pray about it. And it seems silly,
right?
But train your heart and your mind to say, I'm going to seek God first, and he's going to provide, and he's going to guide me the way. And especially when it comes to something like dating. Dating to courtship to marriage can be a beautiful thing, and it's a thing the Bible talks about marriage and what that reflection of God's relationship is with us. But it's a serious thing. Yeah. And if you go in just free willy-nilly, just thinking you're going to get by, just like anything. If you just went to a job, you didn't do your research, you didn't understand the purpose, you didn't do anything, there's a good chance you're probably going to get hurt in the end. Yep. And it's even more so with relationships. When you have two very different people who have different stories, different lives, different emotions, different values coming together, it's crazy that it even works out, but it's the way God designed it. So really just, if you are wanting to date and you're serious about dating and you've been on your heart, just pray about it. And it seems like a cop-out answer, and a lot of people don't like it. Where it's like, oh, of course, Christian's just going to say to pray about it. Yeah. But you have to. Like, why wouldn't you? If you had, like, somebody who loved you unconditionally, wants what's best for you, and has the answers, and you said, okay, I'm not going to ask that person. I'm just going to go over here and ask this person. It wouldn't make sense. It's the same thing in the context with God. He wants what's best for you. That's the important thing to remember. He wants you to be happy, fulfilled, loving too in a relationship. But you got to seek his will first, and he'll bring the right person when the time's right. Sometimes it's a timing thing. There's a song, the lyrics have been stuck in my head. I like Phil Wickham. He's one of our guys we like listening to.
He's going to be on the show someday. I'm going to speak that one into existence.
Phil, if you're watching this somehow, we want to get you on. But one of the lyrics is, when you say yes or no or wait. And I think when it comes to relationships, we think, okay, it's yes or no. I'm single. God's saying no.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's a wait thing. And there's probably some spiritual maturity that needs to happen. God's kind of over here working in this girl's life that he's going to prepare for you. You're over here. He's melding you into the guy he wants you to be. And sometimes it's patience and trusting that God has it all in control. And eventually he brings them into your life. So I like your point, Aaron, is just, we just don't seek God's counsel enough, or, very rarely, and we need to change it. So
I love that. All right, well, that ties in so perfectly to mistake number 10. And if you're watching this, you're going to say, okay, these guys have been giving me all the tips to get into a relationship, right? They've been telling me how to communicate, what the stages of relationships are, how to set boundaries, how to end it if the relationship's not going well. Okay, mistake number 10 is, if you're watching this, I know this is going to ring true for you. It's ring true for us. Putting the need to be in a relationship above the purpose that God has for you is probably the biggest mistake you can make. And what I mean by that is, like Kyle said, when the timing is right, you can't stop what God has coming for you. We all have stories of that. Think of how you met your best friends, how you got your job, all those things. A lot of times we had no idea how they were going to happen. What's meant to be will be yours, and what's not meant to be will not be yours, no matter how hard you try to make it. So I would just encourage you that God has a purpose for you and your individual life. And just trust that when the time comes, you'll be in that relationship. But if not, just pray, Lord, use me in this season of singleness. That's one of the things that I love about living with Kyle and our other roommate, Max, is that I see these guys just pursuing the Lord with all their heart in this season of singleness. And it just makes me so happy as a guy who's moving towards engagement. I can't wait. Someday, Kyle's future wife is going to be watching this video. Max's wife is going to be watching this video. I'm seeing these guys working now, all the behind the scenes. It's like when you're at a play and there's all the stuff going on behind the scenes, backstage, and then it moves into the front. There's so many different ways that you can be used in a season of singleness that you can't when you're in a relationship. And that's my biggest thing, is whatever season you're in, whether you're single, whether you're in that we're talking phase, we're dating, whatever, find the benefit in that. Life moves quickly. And that's about more than just dating too. If you're in a job right now and it's not the job you want to be in, find the beauty of that. Find the benefit of that. Find God's calling for you in that season.
I like that.
Because whatever you're out of that season, you're going to miss those benefits, right? Yeah. So that's my last tip, is putting the needs of a relationship, the need to be in a relationship, above God's purpose for you. Big mistake. We've both made that one at times. And I just hope that guys watching this too, they look and they think like, well, man, did these guys just learn all these tips just from researching or, any of that? And I would just encourage you too, that if you're watching this, we've learned all these from experience, right. Not only from ourselves, but from people we love, from family members, from friends. So if you're watching this, I hope that you kind of took good notes, that you can soak it all in. And I'm just praying for your guys' relationships, that you would be able to not only avoid mistakes, but fill them with God, fill them with vision, with intentionality. I had some scripture I wanted to share. Proverbs 18:22. You talked about the beauty of how godly relationships are a good thing. I think our neighbor is like cutting down a tree across the street over there.
Didn't mean to jump off the set. I just don't think you guys want to hear leaf blowers out there.
So how godly relationships are a good thing. The book of Proverbs, the book of wisdom, Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. I think that's a pretty clear thing, that with the right woman, in the right season, with the right intentionality, the right vision, it's a great thing. If you don't have all those elements, it can be a disastrous thing. Again, that's one of the biggest things that the enemy does. He takes beautiful things and he distorts them into sin, into destruction. Another that I put too is from the prophet Amos 3:3. It says, "Do two walk together unless they have agreed to meet?" And that's a very simple sounding verse, but you really think about it. Walking together, right? Not you're walking up there, I'm walking here, we're on the same street, like we're lockstep, right, left, unless they agree to meet, agree on where are we going? Like you said, what's the vision? How are we going to get there? What are we going to do if you fall? How do I pick you up? there's a lot of scripture around this, but those were just a couple verses I wanted to share that I think support the importance of this. But yeah, any final thoughts? There's a lot in this episode. I guess where's your head at after sharing all these?
Well, there's one thing you said, and I was reminded of it. There's a gentleman in my connection group, Josh Langland. His father, someone we know very well. And one of his prayers when we got together this last week, he's also engaged, getting married here in a couple months, in 2 months, or in July. And one of his prayer was he wants to enjoy the season he's in right now in the engagement instead of just looking forward to the marriage. Because I think there is that natural temptation. In single, I can't wait till I'm dating. Dating, I can't wait till we're engaged. I can't wait till we're married.
Married, can't wait till we have kids.
Yeah, kids, and then the next...
Retired.
And then you look back on your life, it's like, whoa, like I was always looking ahead. So that's another challenge. Like you said, find the benefit of where you are now.
Yeah.
If you're in single, there's verses that talks about singleness and the blessing it is to really dedicate that time and serve the Lord. If you're engaged, there's benefits to that.
Yep.
So if you are single, it's good to have that heart desire to want to have companionship and love somebody and have someone. That's great. But I encourage you to look for where you're at now and realize this is probably the most time you'll ever have in your life. And you have a lot of opportunity to do really good things, to help other people, love God more, do those things. So enjoy it. And then when you finally meet that person you're dating, enjoy it. And then so on and so on. So I just think as a culture, and just people, I wouldn't even say it's a culture. I think over time we all do it. We always want the next thing instead of today.
Yeah.
Like today it's Saturday morning. It's May. It's beautiful here. Or is it April? It's April. I don't even see. I'm looking ahead already. But it's April, ahead. And it's just like I'm thinking about today. Like, okay, while you're speaking, like I just want to enjoy this day. I want to enjoy eating lunch together later. I want to enjoy just this time now. So I think that's just my final thought. I enjoy listening to your mistakes because you made them, but just to learn from them. Yeah. And Aaron's a fun guy to live with in his season of life, just to see where he was, where he's come from now, where he's going with Sammy. And obviously I'm a single guy, but these different stages of life, but we're very similar. Yeah, it's such a blessing. So we just hope you found some encouragement from these lessons. Please take them to heart. Don't make the mistake of hearing this and then going out and making them and then getting hurt. Yeah. Like protect yourself from it. You're going to make mistakes. If you do, that's not the end of the world either. Learn from them. They say making mistakes aren't bad, but don't make them twice type of thing.
Fool me once. Shame on you.
Fool me twice. Can't get fooled again.
Won't happen again.
So that's all I got to say. We just thank you guys for checking out this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned from it. If you have any other mistakes you would drop in the comments that you've learned from that you want to share with some of our audience, we'd obviously appreciate it. I'm sure they would too. So thanks again for checking this out. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And until then,
keep advancing the kingdom.